We've had our beloved Opel Rekord, the Pigeonrat, here for a couple of years now, and we've had a lot of fun with it. However, we could have a lot more fun if it had more power. A lot more power. What we have in here is a 3.0 liter V6. In the early 2000s, Nissan made a 3.3 liter version of the exact same engine that you could get in an Xterra. And some of those even came with a supercharger.
Hey guys, I know on the channel here we haven't talked much about the Pigeonrat, our mascot vehicle, in a while. Well, that's going to be changing soon. As you can see behind me here, we have ourselves a supercharged Xterra that I just picked up in Redding, California. I'm driving it back to Utah now, and the reason I've got that is because this is going to be the new power plant for the Pigeonrat. Time for the Pigeonrat to get a supercharger.
With that engine and the right power upgrades, we could double or even triple our current power output. What we needed for our swap was a supercharged Xterra with a manual transmission. We found the perfect donor in California. The price was right, so we went and got it.
Through Northern California is freaking beautiful. It's a long ass drive just to get a car back to Utah, but hey, if you got to drive through a long road, at least it can be a pretty one. Just driving down I-80. The old Xterra is still hanging in there. Seems like it's doing pretty good. So hopefully it ends up being a pretty good donor. So I decided to take a break here and get some fuel in the middle of nowhere freaking Nevada. So Ryan texted me and asked me if supercharger whined like a supercharger. Well, I don't know, so let's find out. Yeah, I guess not. Oh well. Still looks like a supercharger. Hopefully it works like a supercharger. I started this trip about 4:30 this morning in Utah. Went all the way out to California, down, currently driving across Nevada. And as you can see from the sunset there, it's getting pretty late, and I've still got a long way to go. So we got several hours to go across Nevada still, and then another hour and a half across Utah before I get home. But we're still driving. We're gonna get there today, but it's gonna take some time. See you at the next update. It took all day to get back home, but eventually I was able to introduce the Xterra to the Pigeonrat.
Once it was in the shop, it was time to take the Xterra apart. First we pulled the engine, but we also had to remove the entire wiring harness. With the harness out, we laid it all out to see exactly what we had to work with. I'm pretty excited to get working on putting this engine into the Pigeonrat. So obviously we yanked it out of the Xterra here, but this isn't quite as simple as just bolting it in. We've got all of this crap that we also pulled out of the Xterra because a lot of this is necessary to make this run. The problem is we don't know how much of this we need for this. So what we've decided to do is build a run stand so that we can prove that we can make the engine run outside of the vehicle, and we can start paring this down to the bare minimum of what we need to make it run. We built the run stand out of a bunch of scrap metal we had laying around and some cheap casters. With the engine on the stand, we got all the accessories mounted up along with the radiator. Then we rigged up the gas pedal and a key and draped on the entire wiring harness along with the gas tank to be sure everything still worked. As you can see here, I'm working on the Xterra wiring harness. So I'm trying to pare it down so that I have just the wires I need and none of the extra for swapping this supercharged motor in. You can see here, this is all the wire I've trimmed already. So you can see quite a mess of wires. Still got quite a bit to go, but that is why I built the run stand, so that I can trim wires out and then prove to myself that everything still works before I tear this thing apart. Here is our run stand. I've moved it outside so that I can leave it on for a little bit longer, but it's all done. Finished paring the wiring harness down to pretty much the bare essentials. Right here, this is the wiring for the alternator. It hooks on right here, and it's pretty much separate from the rest of the wiring harness, so that could just sit off to the side. Since I'm not running this thing long enough to need the alternator to keep the battery charged, I've just left it disconnected. But it's a pretty simple thing to add that back into the wiring harness when we're ready, so we're just leaving that off for now. Everything else I've got right here. This is everything. As you can see, I've got it down to just the bare minimum. There's a couple extra wires here. This is air intake temperature sensor. I'll have to wire that in somewhere. And over here we have the OBD2 loop, which obviously you don't need that right now, but we'll need it later, so we've got that. And everything else is it. We're wired over into the computer here. Right now we're wired up into this key, but obviously that'll get added to the key switch on the Pigeonrat when it comes time to integrate this into that. So basically we hook up the battery lines, fuel pump, and a ground for our harness, and that's it. Over here we've got our gas tank and a battery sitting here with fuel pump down inside there, so we'll just hook up to the fuel pump, hook up to the battery, and this thing will run. All right, now that we've got everything hooked up, let's go ahead and start her up, see how she does. Now that we've got the wiring harness down to just what's necessary and proved that the engine runs on the stand, it's time to take everything apart for a rebuild. First up, we'll take off the supercharger. Then we'll get it prepped for a clean and polish. All right, we took off all of the bolts that go onto the supercharger that we don't absolutely have to have on here. Got the air intake taken off, and as you can see, we've got all of the holes all taped up so that the inside is sealed, and we're going to send this thing off to get polished up and hopefully look a hell of a lot better when we get it back. So let's get this boxed up, and we'll get her sent out. In the meantime, we'll get to work taking apart the rest of the engine. Well, I was already planning on getting headers for this thing anyway, but this passenger side exhaust manifold is foobar. Good thing I'm not going to use it. As you can see behind me here, we have our engine completely disassembled. We have the block here ready to head off to the machine shop to get the work done on that. And while that's away, we're going to clean up the rest of this. Now, luckily, we don't have to replace very much of this. A lot of this stuff is just bracketry that we'll just clean up. We have a brand new air conditioning compressor. We have a brand new alternator. We have brand new timing belt and tensioner. We've got a brand new starter over there. So a lot of this stuff is good to go. Just need to be cleaned up a little bit before we put it back onto our refurbished block. So we're going to get this taken care of, and hopefully it won't be too long before this is back and we can start getting on reassembly. Here we've gotten pretty much everything useful we can off of this Xterra, and we are ready to move forward with the rest of our engine swap while this thing heads off to the scrapper. So stay tuned for more episodes to see the rest of the progress. Be sure to like and subscribe, and thanks for watching Uintagarage.